Yeah, sure. Carter Harwood, resident of downtown Salisbury. In regards to the density of the central business zone, I would like to raise the consideration of those like myself who have altered physical mobility. As density of a given area increases, public parking decreases or becomes more complex to utilize. The availability, the viability of accessing stores, restaurants, and public utilities are significantly hindered. I've reviewed PAC 14 recording sessions where density has been addressed. On many of those occasions, density of cities like Annapolis and Baltimore are used as evidence that increasing the density of the central business zone would not be detrimental to the residents. Speaking personally as someone who has lived in Baltimore for over half a decade, I can attest that accessibility there is not a goalpost to strive for. The number, availability, proximity of parking in those municipalities are not significant deterrents for those who must take those considerations into account daily, all of which only accounts for once the construction is completed. Access, sidewalks, pavements, parking, placard parking, etc., during all stages of construction cannot be overlooked in these matters when considering this development. Salisbury can, and I would argue should, aim higher for its citizenry, and this is why I moved to the city and specifically to downtown 3 months and 2 days ago. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ryan Showalter speaking on behalf of Salisbury Town Center Apartments. I want to share one perspective that I think has been missed this evening, but it's really important for your consideration. Actually, two. The first, just to correct a statement that was recently made, it's important to understand that this project has always been understood by the city to be 220 plus units. The land disposition agreement that was executed by the city a year ago, approved by a majority of the city council, expressly acknowledges that the intentions are to develop 226 residential units on this property. That's always been the plan from the beginning. But the thing that's more important to understand is that this isn't about doubling the density of this zoning district. This is, in part, about addressing the decision of the circuit court, which virtually cut in half the density of the CBD. For the last 2.5 decades, the CBD has permitted 40 units by right, but an additional 30 units by special exception. A special exception is a presumptively valid use in the state of Maryland. Your comprehensive plan, your downtown master plan, the Metro Core plan, all of those plans were prepared, adopted, and they were done in the context of the CBD permitting 70 units per acre. So this is not a doubling of this density. It does increase from 70 to 80 units per acre. But a few months ago, the circuit court, in a decision that we believe is grossly incorrect, invalidated the city zoning and stripped away 30 units per acre of density that's been permitted for nearly 3 decades in downtown Salisbury. That mechanism that has been taken away from the city of Salisbury, a special exception, is a mechanism that's used throughout the state of Maryland. I give you countless jurisdictions where additional density can be approved by special exception. It's recognized throughout the state. It's the reason we appealed the decision, because we think it's incorrect. So what this action does is it takes the density in downtown Salisbury from what was 70 units per acre, what is now 40 units per acre, back up to 80. So it's a modest increase, and that's fair to say it's an increase, but it's not a doubling of the density, and it's frankly not a change from what was in place when your plans were produced. When you look at the DID staff report, there were questions that DID noted, but I think an important thing to highlight is the proposed development is entirely consistent with the adopted plans and the zoning ordinance that calls for the highest density developments to be located in the CBD. That was DID's recommendation with respect to consistency with your plans. And I'll just draw your attention again to the Planning Commission's recommendation. The Planning Commission voted 6-1 to recommend approval of this text amendment. And if you haven't looked at it, again, I'll draw your attention to their findings of fact. They produced a detailed letter with multiple findings of fact in support of that decision. So we appreciate your support.
My name is Jamie Heater. I am a resident of the city of Salisbury, and I've worked in downtown Salisbury for the last 18 years. I am for the text amendment to increase density in the central business district from 40 units per acre to 80 units per acre. I am for a vibrant, populated downtown and a strong believer in the well-documented benefits of urban infill development. It's better for our environment, it's better for our towns, it's better for our communities, and that is well-documented versus urban sprawl. The current planning and zoning codes allows for an inherent residential density in our CBD of 40 units per acre. We've been hearing these numbers a lot. However, in the infrastructure and development staff report dated November 21st, the ID department analyzed the CBD and, quote, this is from their report, the residential housing stock in the CBD currently exists at a density of 3.75 units per acre for the entire district. That is our current density in the CBD, is 3.75 units. So, end quote, that's making it less dense today than my quiet neighborhood of Poets Colony, where most of the lots sit on a quarter of an acre. Downtown is less dense than my sleepy little neighborhood tucked away in the pine trees. This council has the ability to change this and be a part of the future solutions to ensure well-thought-out implementation and public policies surrounding growth. Lack of parking is a perception and a solvable problem. We have done parking studies. We have the resources to solve these problems that are ahead of us. And I just commend council for the bravery that it takes. Change takes courage. And again, I just want to thank you all for the work that you're doing. It's been tense, but I have appreciated even sitting through this entire, the work session and the legislative session, seeing the work that you're doing, and I want to applaud you for your continued work for Salisbury. And please approve increased density for Salisbury. Let's make downtown a vibrant place.
Thank you.
Holly Worthington. I'm a downtown business owner, and I live in the city of Salisbury. I almost decided not to speak tonight because it probably be as effective as it's been the many testimonies I've given here that were not heard. However, I want to know a few things about those people who have changed their stance on this. What caused you to change your stance? If this is in the best interest of the public that you're changing your stance, then it would behoove you to explain why. There's too many unknowns to this project. We haven't seen real facts. Formal studies showing how this zoning change would create a positive impact actually for our downtown. This project was denied on the basis of the negative impacts it would have on the existing downtown. This density, once increased, cannot be reversed. Where did we come up with 80 being the number? Why 80? Because it coincides with the local STCA plan, not because it's a magic number, or shall I say the golden ticket for our downtown. When I initially got involved in this, it was when I went to the first historic meeting. And when I spoke at that historic meeting, I stated I had concerns about parking. My building has no street parking, no unloading zone, and we have no parking lot adjacent to where my building is. At that meeting, Brad Gillis spoke and said there was existing spots that were going to remain as part of Lot 15. I went to Brad's office. I was told in that conversation I could borrow parking spots from Randy Taylor. When I contacted the city planning department and said, can you look at a map and see where these existing spots are that are going to remain in Lot 15? They said they were all privately owned. Now, you guys don't have an issue with parking for your business and your people because you have your own parking lots. I don't have anything. So taking this away from me is taking away from the investment that I put into the downtown, the hard work that I put into building my business, and my look on this, or outlook on this whole project is you're changing the facade of our whole downtown. We are a historic area. I heard people speak about saying the modern buildings are going to make our community more vibrant, but really it doesn't go with our architecture as well. So I really think until we get formal studies back and on behalf of the city that you guys wait to make a decision, because once you do, this can't be reversed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Kate Wolf. I'm a resident in the city of Salisbury. Double density is a term many of us never thought of, heard of, or really gave much thought to prior to the past couple months here. Downtown development projects were proposed as the double density text amendment was because it did not fit the current project that STCA would like to build in our downtown Salisbury. The STCA luxury project at the center of the double density debate was presented overscaled and not within the city ordinances from the start. It's been denied not once, twice, but 3 times. It's a red flag when developers want waivers and zoning changes to suit their projects. There are laws and ordinances that are in place to protect our city for a reason. A project of this size should have had a well-advertised public forum to offer input and transparency on such a large project slated to affect our downtown and city taxpayers. Maryland is in an almost $3 billion deficit. Look at where the money is being spent. Why is Westmore sending state money down here to fund luxury apartment complexes? Instead of investing in our education system and roadways, developers think that the money should be spent on their for-profit project. And the city of Salisbury and taxpayers should pay for the upwards cost of an $11 million parking garage that the developers get paid to build. The proposed luxury housing project riding on the double density text amendment doesn't address nor correct affordable housing in our area. Why are there so many big tax incentives for developers when we are in a state deficit, especially when they're not paying for usage of our city services, fire, EMS, police, or teachers, or paying their fair share of city taxes for 20 years? Building luxury apartments across from a toxic chicken slaughterhouse doesn't quite invoke the image of an area I want to play or live in. People move to the Eastern Shore every day to get away from jammed up living circumstances. They want space to move, they want land to live on, and they want fresh air to breathe. Please take into consideration the extreme negative effects this changing of the text amendment will have on our city and for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Chris Adams, 100 West Main Street. This whole project has been sold to the public as a public-private partnership. And when I really did a little bit of research on what a public-private partnership is supposed to be, it's supposed to really be about infrastructure. And by infrastructure, I mean that we partner with private entities when we need infrastructure built to support a community, such as, but not limited to, transportation, airports, first responders' needs, all of those things that we know what infrastructure is. This is a private project. I don't know how it got slated as a public-private partnership. I don't know how that word got used for this, because I think about my tenants, slumlord that I'm supposed to be, according to everybody here. I'm also a Christian landlord, and I do my very best to treat my tenants with dignity and respect. And I have one wonderful woman who's rented from me for 15 years, and she pays $794 for a 3-bedroom cottage over in the Priscilla Street area. And she makes $46,000 a year. I don't see why or how this person on the verge of retirement should have to contribute a single dollar to this project. Not $1 should she have to contribute to it under the guise of a public-private partnership. My tenants matter to me. Maybe you guys don't believe that, but they do. I have a lot of long-term people who have been with us, and they can't afford this continual tax increase. Just got my tax assessments this week, guys. Guess what? The rent's gonna have to go up because the taxes went up, because the assessments went up, okay? This lady's gonna be affected by that, and that's hard enough. But when taxes get raised as a result of a private program that the city has partnered with, that's just not fair. It's not fair to these people. They pay their taxes through their rent, and it's not fair. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. I just want to say that you want to know how much I care about this community. Today's my birthday, and I'm spending it at 9 p.m. at a public comment meeting. So I just want to say, it's clear, I'll make my introductions. It's clear that there's a lot of love for this community in this room, so I'll emphasize that. My name is Megan Outen, lifelong Salisbury resident. I'll speak on something later tonight, but I will be here speaking with 2 hats in mind. But first, it's going to be as a Salisbury resident, urging the Salisbury City Council to support the density amendment. This is an opportunity to create attainable homes for everyday residents, and I want to emphasize the importance of the word attainable because I know that there's been fear-mongering about this not being an affordable housing project. But attainable housing is just as important for our residents. When we look at Salisbury University and UMES, and we want to talk about how we keep that budding talent that we have coming into our community, attainable housing is how we do it. This is an opportunity for us to keep those everyday residents, ensuring that our nurses and our teachers can live in the very same communities they work in. And I know that this density is not just about housing, but it's going to be about our community and creating an inclusive community for everyone. And this is an opportunity for our leadership to prioritize the many and not just the few. So I thank you again for the time. I know it's been a long evening for you all, so thank you for hearing all of our thoughts, and thank you.
Hi, thank you all so much. My name is Jeremy Norton. I am a lifelong Salisbury resident as well as a business owner in the Central Business District. We've heard lots of pros and cons this evening about this proposed density increase. And one of the things that I wanted to make a note of that a lot of people have been talking about parking. And as I drove here, I was very surprised at how many open parking spaces there were downtown. Now, for the gentleman in the wheelchair, there were none immediately right in front of here. However, unfortunately, that is the way it is in many of our downtowns and many of our municipalities, limited parking directly in front of the business. I specifically saw a lovely meme on Facebook, if you will, that I believe somebody within our business community had posted about the distance you actually walk when you park at Walmart and then actually walk into Walmart, walk around the Walmart, and then walk back to your car, okay? That is almost the same, if not more, distance than you would walk from the parking garage to my restaurant downtown, okay? The last time I went to one of these meetings, I had a whole bunch of statistics about over 1,000 people had visited and dined in my restaurant in the past couple weeks. And while every once in a while there's a muster of parking, that's not the issue at hand in Wycomico County and Salisbury, Maryland. The issue at hand in Salisbury, Maryland is housing. It's housing. We need more houses. That's just it. It doesn't matter whether they're luxury, doesn't matter whether they're affordable. It's basic supply and demand. The more houses we have, the more affordable everything is going to be. The more attainable, as Megan said, everything is going to be. We have a slew of extremely talented young individuals that are graduating from our universities that are choosing to stay here in Salisbury because they see what our downtown is becoming. It's thriving right now. I've been here for 12 years. It's the best it's ever been downtown. I was here when there was nothing. I was here when the Vernon Powell building went out of business. I was here when my mother has had a business in downtown Salisbury for 30 years. She's owned Dance Center Salisbury, okay? Like, we are here. I want this. We need this. We need housing, and we need density. We need this for Salisbury. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, Vaughn Siggers, City of Salisbury resident. Can I have an extra minute? I can't. I would first like to ask if the city clerk, city solicitor could clarify the logistics of voting physically versus virtually. And it's not just a whimsical matter, it's not just an emotional matter, it's not just, should I pause?
I don't want to, I mean, this is your time. I don't want you to,
Can you stop that and so she can explain?
this is your time. I don't want to.
Okay, so when we're talking about virtually versus physical, it does matter, and that needs to be clarified, please. Also, I would like to have it clarified, as someone said earlier, I believe Councilwoman Jackson voted in June 2023 against this. Previously, she'd been voting for it, and the last time you voted in support of it. So I'm wondering if you could explain your change of vote there. And I'm hoping that, when I look at the relationship with Gillis and the council, I see where the Gillis Company has recently done some work for an associate company.
Ms. Siggers, we're not going to.
Well, I don't want to see impropriety, so I'm hoping that that isn't an
Siggers.
issue. At the last meeting, it seems that your employer indicated that you should vote in support of this. It seems to me that you perhaps should be recused from voting on this. I just think that we need to get that in order, who is able to vote and who isn't able to vote. When we're thinking about attainable versus affordable, will those people residing out in the forest right now be able to afford or attain that housing? These people who are sleeping under the bridges and what have you, will they be able to get in there? I mean, we need the parking as much as we need the housing. They both matter. So I hope that you will take into account, and I hope that you won't find my comments redundant. It's just reinforcing the significance of having parking sufficiently for what you're wanting to build. So I am not in support of increasing the density. I am in support. I can appreciate the flourishing vision for the downtown area. I guarantee you, whatever Gillis does, it will be fabulous. Absolute, no thought about that, no doubt about that. But please be feasible and be responsible to the whole public.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for the introduction. My name is Brad Gillis, 609 Tony Tank Lane, Salisbury, Maryland. Born and raised Salisbury. I come to you tonight as a city resident, or excuse me, a city taxpayer. I come to you as a father. I come to you as a business owner, a downtown advocate. I have lived, worked, breathed, gotten in. I was talking to Chief Mindshine earlier, and I got in some of my first trouble at downtown as rollerblading, and Vic Keene would chase after me, and so causing and being involved in downtown is not new to me at all. Honestly, it's something that I've been doing since I was 15 years old. I've been in and around downtown. And this project, as a local, born and raised, Parkside grad, went away to college, came back, has been honestly a lifelong project for myself and for our family. Our tagline is building community for generations. We believe that this project does that. We believe that increase in density in downtown Salisbury does that. Is this project perfect? Is this text amendment perfect? Are we as a developer perfect? No. We have an idea. We have been implementing that idea. My personal involvement started prior to 2015, 2013, under Mayor Ireton. This has been essentially my third child, this project. Okay. All that aside, it's highly personal to me. We're going to get it right. I'm here. If there's questions, there's comments, I will take constructive criticism. I will take constructive comments. We have the time, energy, and passion to make this project right. Is it going to be perfect? No. Is it going to satisfy everyone's requirements and expectations? Absolutely not. But what it will do is be a betterment for downtown, and it will complete and start and implement a vision that we've been discussing as a community for a generation. And I hope that the council will consider moving forward with the text amendment for those reasons. Thank you.
Yep.
Randy, he was one of the guidance council.
I'm sure.
At this time, are there any other comments for public hearing for ordinance 2909?
Excuse me.
All right, seeing none, the time is now 9. Oh,
I'm not sworn in, but can I be sworn in?
yeah. Yes, if you want to stand and be, yep, you can be. We appreciate your honesty. Yeah, she's gonna. If you want to stand right there, she's gonna swear.
Raise your hand. Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Of course.
Good evening, council and everyone who's here. My name is Priscilla Timken, and I am a city resident of Salisbury, longtime city resident of Salisbury. And thank you, Brad. I've been sitting here and been uncomfortable to speak because I kind of think I might mix a little emotion with some good, solid, reasoning and offer something different that, other people have not already spoken to. And you gave me that platform, and I thank you for that, because I honestly think you want to get this right. And on that note, I would just like to ask the council, I think you have heard from many people about the merits of taking a pause, because I think a lot of what all of us as taxpayers and residents of this community feel is that it's not passing the smell test. Optics matter. I grew up on College Avenue in the Pinehurst area. I saw the transition of the university from a small college to what it has become, the good and the bad. It's brought many assets to the community. But it changed a neighborhood tremendously. Changed the dynamics of rental and single home ownership. Many of these things are not new just to Salisbury, but just over time. But it has impact. Neighborhoods matter to community. I've been interested in this project and talked to your dad when I moved back in 1985. I've been through this whole process that Mike Dunn spoke to. This is a critical point in the future of this community. And while it may bring some diversity in architecture that will bring vibrancy, I'm not against any of that, we got to get it right. We've got to get it right. And when I speak to the smell test, I moved from, little personal note, I thought I'd live my life in Europe, be a part of the State Department, and I ended up living 2 blocks from where I grew up. And I loved that it brought me back here. But when the former administration started making changes to our residential streets that, in my opinion, and I don't think I stand alone, has made residential streets a vehicular hazard. I think, and we're seeing all of this happening kind of behind the scenes, and the former council was even taken to the Ethics Board of the state over the closed meeting. I think there needs to be a pause to get this right. And I just want to say that. I'm not against change. I want to see a vibrant downtown. I don't want it to be driven by the university because the university is a member of our community.
Thank you.
But we, the people, are what makes Salisbury great.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
President Doherty, before you take a vote, I'm in a kind of a difficult position because I can't go to I guess I could go to the podium, but I'd be limited to 3 minutes. But I wanted to say a few things just before we go before the vote. This whole conversation has been going on for a couple of years, and it's really revolving around the math, true math, what's the real math, and the legal piece. And I heard Showalter earlier talk about this idea that there's this special exception piece that you claim that there was a bunch of special exceptions you could get throughout the state, and yet those cases weren't presented. And that's why I'm a little confused by your presentation there. I think the enabling legislation is something that we have to conform to. Secondly, this really isn't a density debate. It's really a parking debate. And the issue really, for example, there's one right now the hospital's involved with where they're going to be north of 80 units per acre. We're working through that now. And the reason why I'm not opposed to the projects is because they self-contain their parking on their site. They make it safe, they make it contained, and the city doesn't have to subsidize or participate in it. It's a great project. We're going to be in favor of that. So we should have really kind of reconfigured the conversation from density to parking. What happened was we blew up the parking standard a number of years ago, and now, so we're not only contending with eliminating parking in the parking lots of the city of Salisbury, but we're adding the density and the impact of that parking. So that is the real challenge. And let me say one last thing. That again, and just to say a couple things. One, the idea that the marginal increase in density is going to have a material impact in the housing stock of the city of Salisbury is crazy, in my view. In other words, there's 44,000 households, dwelling units in the Wicomico County. The idea that we've got about 5 acres. So the difference between those two is about, pick a number, 250 units, call it. If we go to the higher, it's less 0.0007 in terms of the impact. So it's not even going to move the needle from a demand-supply standpoint. Number two, to Mrs. We were talking about landlords. Landlords are competing with this project. It's silly. It's a silly conversation. Third, the parking garage. We have a garage right now, 1.5 times the size, 1/8 of the debt, and it owes the city $800,000 as we sit here. Now, this parking garage will be, pick a number, we'll bond at $9 million if we build it. For 2/3 the size, we will lose $500,000. Pick a number in that range, and it'll be attached to my memo on this topic, which will come out of the pocket in an enterprise fund that doesn't have the cash flow to support it. So, listen, I've been downtown for 25 years, owned a building for downtown for 25 years, had a business down here for 17 years. I'm all for the downtown, I'm all for development. This is not the right approach. We are in, and I'm going to give one more example, and I'll close. The one project for which I think President Dowdy is familiar with is Lot 30. Lot 30 right now is proposed to be 41 units of residential, 9,000 square feet of commercial. They're eliminating 42 current parking permits, which is Becker Morgan. They're going to create a demand of about 119, and they're going to put back 22 spaces back. What that will do is create a negative 130 spaces that has to go somewhere. It will not be provided by the developer because of this lack of parking standard. We are on the wrong path on this topic. We need to stop, and we need to pause it, and we need to get good information. Because these are not rich people. These are poor people. These are poor people on subsidy. They're going to be parking across the street somewhere with groceries and kids. This is not good. This is not good planning. It's not good for Salisbury. It's not good for the downtown. So I'll close with that. There's just been a huge math problem that people are not looking at, and it's to her point, we only have one chance to get this right, and we are clearly on a wrong path. So. Hey, facts are difficult to deal with. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I guess so. Facts are hard to deal with, I know. Mm-hmm.
Any other comments for the public hearing? The time is now 9:36. The public hearing is now closed. All those in favor of ordinance number 2909, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. I want to make a motion to table the vote for a second reading until after the council has received parking lot study results. I recommend that we do this another 30 days. It may only be a month, but this has taken long enough, and it's time that we get all of our facts straight and move forward with a proper decision. And if that is more development, as has been proposed, that's fine. I just want to have all the facts.
Shield, I'm not sure if
Yes.
you can make a motion while there's a current motion, or so she
Hasn't been seconded, yeah.
Council President, I'd allow Councilwoman DeShield to make the motion to see whether there's a second and then whether there's a majority
Okay.
vote. So she's called for the motion. Is there a second?
Folks. Come on. Okay. And again, just to circle back, so all those in favor of ordinance number 2909, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
And the chair votes aye. Ordinance 2909 passes. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2907 for second reading.
So move.
Second.
Actually,
Let me just find that.
I strike the motion from the record. Actually, if I want to entertain a motion for a 2-minute recess.
Moved.
I would greatly appreciate it.
Surprise.
All right, thank you all. I will entertain a motion to re-adjourn this meeting, or adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right, entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2907 for second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Ordinance number 2907, an ordinance of the City of Salisbury approving a budget amendment of the FY 2025 general fund budget to appropriate funds to the Salisbury Fire Department's operating budget. This is before you for second reading. There have been no changes or amendments since first reading.
All those in favor of ordinance 2907, please signify by saying aye.
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 Hearing none opposed, the chair votes aye. I will entertain a motion and a second to approve ordinance 2910 for first reading.
So moved. Second.
Ordinance number 2910, an ordinance of the City of Salisbury approving a budget amendment of the FY 2025 general fund budget and the FY 2025 water sewer fund budget to appropriate additional funds required for field operations, whereas the city has declared multiple pieces of equipment as surplus and the equipment has been sold through online auction, and whereas the city equipment was operated by field operations, housing and community development, Development of Infrastructure and Development, and Waterworks Departments. And whereas the city's field operations, housing and community development, Department of Infrastructure and Development, and Waterworks desires to use the proceeds to assist in purchasing and repairing equipment. And whereas the funds will be instrumental in continued operation for field operations, Department of Infrastructure and Development, Housing and Community Development, and Waterworks Departments. And whereas this budget amendment as provided must be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and the approval of forfeits of council. Section 1 of the ordinance reads that the city's fiscal year 2025 field operations budget is hereby amended as follows. It looks like there is a increase in revenue and expense in the amount of $71,600.88. And for the record, I am not going to read the account numbers based upon the presentation at work session. It sounds like they may change. Section 2, the City of Salisbury's fiscal year 2025 water sewer budget is hereby amended as follows. Again, it looks like there's an increase to revenue and expense in the amount of $2,363.83. And Section 3, the City of Salisbury's fiscal year 2025 housing and community development budget is amended to increase revenue and expense in the amount of $2,335.63. And finally, the City of Salisbury's fiscal year 2025 Department of Infrastructure and Development is amended by, again, increasing revenue and expense in the amount of $10,891.89.
All those in favor, please, of ordinance 2910. 2910, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
None.
Great, and the chair votes aye. I will entertain a motion and a second to approve ordinance 2911 for first reading.
So moved. Second.
Ordinance number 2911, this is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Services Systems for the purpose of accepting grant funds in the amount of $4,000 and to approve a budget amendment to the grant fund to appropriate these funds for the Salisbury Fire Department. Before I read this ordinance, I would just like to request that the city clerk or my office fix the typographical error in line 5, systems is misspelled. Whereas the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Service Systems has a 50/50 grant program for the purchase of automated external defibrillators, referred to as AEDs, and cardiac monitoring devices. And whereas the purpose of the grant program is to provide matching funds for the purchase of AEDs and cardiac monitoring devices by fire and EMS departments in the state of Maryland, and whereas the City of Salisbury submitted a grant application to the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Services Systems for the partial funding of the purchase of AEDs, and whereas the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Service Systems has awarded the city funds in the amount of $4,000, and whereas the city must enter into a grant agreement with the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Services defining how these funds will be released and accepted, and whereas all funds shall be used toward the purchase of AEDs by the Salisbury Fire Department, and whereas Section 7-29 of the Salisbury City Charter prohibits the city from entering into a contract that requires an expenditure not appropriated or authorized by the council of the city, and whereas appropriations necessary to execute the purpose of this grant must be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and the approval of forfeits of council. Section 1 of Ordinance 2911 reads that Mayor Taylor is hereby authorized to enter into a grant agreement with the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Services Systems on behalf of the city for the city's acceptance of the grant funds in the total amount of $4,000. And Section 2, the City of Salisbury's grant fund budget is hereby amended as follows. Increase for the Maryland Institute of Emergency Medical Services System revenue account 10500424401 by $4,000. Increase grant match revenue account 10500-499000 by $4,000, and increase SFD medical equipment expense account 10500-546016 by $8,000. And then Section B, the City of Salisbury's general fund budget be and hereby is amended as follows, increasing the grant match for fire expense account 91001599124 by $4,000, and decrease the SFD medical equipment expense account 23045546016 by $4,000.
All those in favor of ordinance number 2911, please signify by saying aye.
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 Hearing none opposed, the chair votes aye. I will entertain a motion in a second to approve ordinance number 2912 for first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Ordinance number 2912, this is an ordinance of the city authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with the state of Maryland for the purpose of accepting grant funds, the amount of $542,000, and to approve a budget amendment to the grant fund to appropriate these funds for the Salisbury Fire Department. Whereas the state of Maryland has an Office of Opioid Overdose Response that awards grant funds for work related to opioid overdoses. And whereas the City of Salisbury submitted a grant application to the State of Maryland's Office for Opioid Overdose Response for funding for enhancement of the SWIFT MDCN opioid overdose programs, and whereas the State of Maryland has awarded the city funds in the amount of $542,000, and whereas the city must enter into a grant agreement with the State of Maryland to define how these funds will be released and accepted, whereas all funds shall be used to enhance the SWIFT MDCN opioid overdose programs, and whereas Section 7-29 of the city charter prohibits the city from entering into a contract that requires an expenditure not appropriated or authorized by the council of the city, and whereas the appropriations necessary to execute the purpose of this grant must be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and approval of 4/5 of council. Section 1 of Ordinance 2912 reads that Mayor Taylor is hereby authorized to enter into a grant agreement with the Maryland Department of Health on behalf of the city for the city's acceptance of grant funds in the amount of $542,000. Section 2, the City of Salisbury's grant fund budget be and hereby is amended as follows. A, increase the Office of Overdose Response, Maryland, account 10500-424040 by $542,000. B, increase salary overtime non-clerical expense account 10500-501-021 by $109,818. C, increase various expense account 10500-502 by $80,182. D, increase consulting fees expense account 10500-513-400 by $302,000. E, increase medical supplies expense account 10500-546-016 by $40,000. And F, increase operating expense account 10500-546-006 by $10,000.
All those in favor of ordinance number 2912, please signify by saying aye.
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 Hearing none opposed, the chair votes aye. I will entertain a motion in a second to approve ordinance number 2913 for first reading.
So move.
Second.
Ordinance number 2913, this is an ordinance of the city authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with the Rural Maryland Council for the purpose of accepting grant funds in the amount of $13,791 and to approve a budget amendment to the grant fund to appropriate these funds for the Salisbury Fire Department. Whereas the Rural Maryland Council has a prosperity investment fund that awards grant funds for various projects to rural communities. And whereas the City of Salisbury submitted a grant application to Rural Maryland Council for funding for the purchase of a iStat portable laboratory device. And whereas Rural Maryland Council has awarded city funds in the amount of $13,791. And whereas the City of Salisbury must enter into a grant agreement with Rural Maryland Council to define how these funds will be released and accepted. Whereas all funds shall be used to purchase an iStat portable laboratory device to be used by the Salisbury Fire Department for patients meeting specific criteria. And whereas Section 729 of the city charter prohibits the city from entering into a contract that requires an expenditure not appropriated or authorized by the council of the city. And whereas the appropriations necessary to execute the purpose of this grant must be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and the approval of 4/5 of the council. Section 1 of Ordinance 2913 reads that the Mayor Taylor is hereby authorized to enter into a grant agreement with the Maryland Department of Health on behalf of the city of Salisbury for the city's acceptance of grant funds in the amount of $13,791. Section 2, the city of Salisbury's grant fund budget be and hereby is amended as follows. A, increase RMC revenue account 10500424540 by $13,791. And B, increase medical expense account 10500513040 by that same amount, which is $13,791.
All those in favor of ordinance number 2913, please signify by saying aye.
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 Hearing none opposed, the chair votes aye. I will entertain a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 2914 for first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Ordinance number 2914, an ordinance of the city of Salisbury approving a budget amendment of the city's FY 2025 budget, accepting a donation from Draper Holdings Charitable Foundation for the Santa Workshop Program. Whereas the cities of Salisbury's Housing and Community Development Department hosts a Santa Workshop Program every year. And whereas Draper Holdings Charitable Foundation's program Bless Our Children wishes to donate funds to help with this annual program. And whereas the donation of funds will be used to purchase gifts, refreshments, and equipment used to help Santa and his elves continue working on making and preparing gifts for next year. And whereas the appropriations necessary for this donation must be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and the approval of 4/5 of the council. Section 1, the city of Salisbury's special revenue fund being hereby is amended as follows. 1, increase contribution revenue, account number 10700456423810001 by $1,000. And 2, increase operating expenses 10700546006810001 by that same amount, which is $1,000.
All those in favor of ordinance number 2914, please signify by saying aye.
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 Hearing none opposed, the chair votes aye. I will entertain a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 2915 for first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Ordinance number 2915. This is an ordinance of the city of Salisbury to accept grant funds from the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs in the amount of $2,998 under the fiscal year 2023 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program. Whereas the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs awarded the Salisbury Police Department $28,148 under fiscal year 2023 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Program Grant Program. And whereas the Salisbury Police Department already included $25,150 of such funds in the city's FY 2024 Schedule C, and whereas the remaining $2,998 was not included on the city's FY 2025 Schedule C, and therefore has not been formally accepted. And whereas the collective amount of the funds will be used to complete the project approved under the FY 2023 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program, and whereas Section 7-29 of the city charter prohibits the city from entering into an agreement that requires an expenditure not appropriated or authorized by the council of the city. And whereas the appropriations necessary to execute the purpose of this grant fund must be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and the approval of 4/5 of council. Section 1, the city's grant fund budget be and hereby is amended as follows. 1, increased revenue account 10500423101-22076 by $2,998. And 2, increase expense account 105057703522076 by $2,998.
All those in favor of ordinance number 2915, please signify by saying aye.
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 Hearing none opposed, the chair votes aye. Thank you, Ms. Boucher.
You're welcome.
At this time, we'll pivot to the public comments portion of the agenda.
Good evening, Robert Taylor again. I was going to leave after the thing on the downtown density, but I heard Showalter speaking and decided to stay, so I called my wife and told her I'd be a little late. I was in court when he made I was one of the plaintiffs in the case, when he made that same argument about, oh, there are all these other cities we can show you. And as Mayor Taylor pointed out, he never came up with any. It's bogus. Unfortunately, what you did tonight will moot the appeal to the Court of Special Appeals, now called the Appellate Court of Maryland. Got to keep that straight. And so that won't come about. But if it had, I can tell you, I can bet the farm on what the court would have done, and they would have affirmed Judge Newt Jackson. Everybody looked at this. We all researched it. I helped research with the attorney that we engaged, Tony Gorski. We couldn't find any cases to support what he said. Neither could he, and neither could Reena Patel, who I think has probably made what my mom would call a small fortune representing the city in this matter. Now, the lady here who said, oh, there's only 3.75 units density throughout the downtown area, well, yeah, that's true. Take away buildings like this, there are no residential units here, there are none in the courthouse, there are none in the state office building. Obviously, when you look at that, that's why the density's low. And in her neighborhood, Poets Colony or whatever, they ever have 200 jurors coming in looking for parking? I don't think so. So, I mean, what you all did was really, as I said, ridiculous. I wasn't surprised except for Ms. Jackson. I was really disappointed. Good night.
Good night.
Carolyn Walgamuth, resident again. This week, through a public information request, we received a redacted version of minutes from the June 20th, 2023 illegal closed meeting. That's when all this started. You sent a redacted version as opposed to the full version. Obviously, there's something you're protecting there. Release the full minutes. You've sold the lots for pennies on the dollar. You've given away the farm now, so just release the darn minutes. Today, a new Open Meetings Act violation was filed regarding the city's this July 31st, 2024 letter to the P&Z Commission, in which you stated that City Council's support for the proposed text amendment. So tonight, I and 24 other people basically wasted their time, energy, and breath telling you during the public hearing what you should be looking at, because you'd already made up your minds. What a waste. Tonight's shameful vote on the zoning density amendment will forever change the central business district. You couldn't even wait till the end of the month to grant a request for the parking study. That's ridiculous. I hope you realize that you've shown your true stripes tonight on many fronts, on the way that you want to conduct your meetings dictatorially, and on who you stand with, the developers, not the city taxpayers. And I join Mr. Taylor in that I am extremely disappointed in the vote tonight, and especially with Ms. Jackson.
Any other public comments?
My name is Michael Sullivan. I live in Wycomico County. I pay city water and sewer. I've never done this before. I've never spoken at public comment, and I am amazingly nervous in this moment. There are a lot of things that have been said tonight, but there are a lot of things that have been said tonight, but there is one thing that stands out in my mind that I can't shake. There was a comment at the end of the work session where the individual, I believe she was a resident of the city of Salisbury for 41 years. She took her opportunity at this podium to criticize two individuals that I don't think anyone here at this council table takes for granted and recognizes the important work that they do. Julie English is an amazing city clerk. She has worked without an assistant for months. Tonight's agenda between the work session and the legislative session amounts to over 400 pages of paper. They're sitting right there in front of Ms. Boucher, who wrote them. They are the epitome of what public servants are. Tonight's city council meeting is able to happen because of the work that you put in, because of the Saturdays that sometimes I see Julie's car at the city headquarters, because of the time I am positive it must take Ms. Boucher to put together all of those papers. And I thought it was important to make sure that while everyone there at the council table knows the excellent work that the staff around you does day in, day out, without any thanks, tonight was proof of that. That it was important for me to make sure that tonight's PAC 14 video recording will forever be able to serve as evidence that they are excellent. And I would humbly suggest that for those folks who want to spend their time at this podium criticizing the people that the city relies on to conduct its business are not folks that need to be at this podium multiple times a meeting. Thank you all for what you do. It's incredibly difficult, but most of all, regardless of any decisions that you make, it's incredibly brave. You all deserve to be commended for it, but most of all, Julie and Ashley, you guys deserve to at least not be criticized. So, thank you all. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good. Better.
I told you guys that you were going to hear from me one more time. And then I think you guys are done. So this is the second hat that I wanted to speak to you all on, which is to say I'm going to speak for a second as a former councilman on the council with you all. And I appreciate the comments that were made by Councilwoman Jackson and earlier that kind of emphasized what I wanted to speak on earlier, which is that our city representatives were elected to be the representatives of the people. And I know that you're tabling this all for later, but I just want to emphasize that importance here, that we should be encouraging every single opportunity for our residents to engage us, making this more accessible. And so by adding on these time limits and adding on all these little different forms, and, you know, I'll say this, I had a school teacher who was wanting to come out today, and she didn't make it in time to do the online registration. And she wasn't quite sure if she was going to make it to the council meeting, and she was so nervous that she didn't even bother coming out tonight to provide comment, and that was actually in support of the density amendment, because she was so worried that she just wasn't going to get the opportunity to speak at all. So I just wanted to urge you all to reconsider this decision. I know that it was done with the intent to kind of streamline these meetings, but it's important that we get the feedback from our residents, and I hope that you guys just reconsider those decisions and at the very least, because I saw Julie's comments on Nextdoor, which is a solution, which is making the online form optional. I think the online form is a phenomenal resource for our residents to sign up in advance, makes the line a little bit easier for Julie so she doesn't have to check in everyone, but just make it optional, and then make sure that residents, as they come in and someone finds out last minute about this meeting, an important topic that they feel really impassioned about, that they can still participate in this process with you all. Because sometimes it's positive comments, and I would love for you all to be able to hear when citizens want to come out and truly support you all. So thank you again so much.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other public comments, we'll move forward to the administration comments.
Oh, I got lots. 30-second soundbite about tonight. I do appreciate everybody sticking with it and listening. I know there are opposite sides of every coin, but I do think that though something is approved and moves forward, there are things that we can take from the conversations, specifically when it came to accessibility, affordability, impact in housing. So as we move things forward, let's continue the conversations. I think often we kind of find ourselves thinking it's this or that, and it doesn't necessarily have to be. So if we need to figure out affordable housing, let's do that too. If we need to make sure when developers are building that they're taking into consideration accessibility, let's make sure we do that. Let's make sure we take care of the future developers, the current developers, the future tenants, the current tenants, the current businesses, and the future businesses. I think we can do all of those things if we just steer the conversation, have a bigger conversation about progress and what that looks like, protecting the now and the future. Big shout out to our staff over the past few weeks. We've not met since we've had the blizzard of 2025. Now, the inclement weather was very difficult. Our staff across the board and all of our central personnels, the people who were able to stay at home, that was great, but the people who had to come in and work around the clock in those type of weather conditions, there's always commendable. So I really appreciate not only public safety, but also our public works folks, that's field operations, waterworks, the zoo, and all the other individuals who had to work. We even had staff members going in, just making sure that everything is still moving forward, and our comms team trying to keep people informed. So thank you. If I missed you, we do really appreciate everything that you all do during these troubling times. And then, great success today. I'll double down on what we saw this morning with the press conference with Department of Housing and Community Development and Salisbury University. Big win for downtown. We're looking forward to the Performing Arts Center. That is going to be a golden ticket of sorts. It is going to be a catalyst for good, and we're looking forward to see that project move forward and for us to be contributors. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. We will, we're pivoting to council comments. We'll start with Councilwoman Gregory, because I know that she has limited a battery on her device, and we thank her for sticking with us. So Councilwoman Gregory, we'll give you first dibs. If you have any public comment.
I appreciate it, guys. I'm going to keep this very brief, just to be mindful of the time. I appreciate everybody coming out and giving public comments. When we make these decisions, it is not made lightly. And I appreciate the council for supporting this project and moving it forward, and supporting the density that will allow more projects to happen moving forward. I just want to address the accessibility issue. As people know, that is a situation that is, that is an issue that is near and dear to my heart. I want to shout out to Brad Gillis for proactively reaching out to our Disability Advisory Committee to set up a time to chat with them. To look at making it more accessible. I would love to get some updates on how we are. I know we've done the kindness spaces, but I'd like to get some more updates about the accessible spaces and the accessibility that I have talked with field ops in the past about, whether it is curb cuts downtown on Main Street to help people in wheelchairs or needing assistance getting up on the curb during events and that sort of thing. I would love to get an update on that. I just want to thank everybody for their patience with me being on Zoom. I am on vacation right now, technically, for the first time in 8 years. And I kind of forgot my sunscreen yesterday, you can tell. But yeah, it's been nice to be able to get away. But I am planning on packing up all the nice warm air we have down here in Florida and bringing it back with us. So rest assured, we'll take care of that. No problem. No problem. And I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gregory. Are there any other council comments?
I have. You know
Councilwoman Jackson, yes.
Wait a minute.
Can you put that clock back up?
Yeah, I think it'd be breakfast.
No. First, I want to get something, I want to clear the air.
Okay.
I had no issue with the density. I never had an issue with the density. I had a problem with the amount of little revenue we received off of those parking lots. That was my rebuttal. And as far as speaking about the VFW and the Brad Gillis sign being on their property, I have no control over what the VFW does. That's far beyond me. So when you go talking about stuff, make sure you know the depths of what you're talking about. I'm just an auxiliary member. I am not a veteran. I make no decisions there other than with the auxiliary. And as far as I'm concerned, Brad Gillis said, I have never spoke about any of this. The decision was made because I did some research. Just like they did their research, I did my research. And I came up with what I came up with, and I voted the way I wanted to vote. I did what was best for the city, whether anybody else thinks it is or not, or you being disappointed in me, then I'm sorry. Because at some point, I'm disappointed in some of you all with your rude comments. I am. You know, I mean, and I'm the type of person, I'm going to say what's on my mind. Like I said, I'm an auxiliary member. I am not a veteran of the VFW. I do not conduct their business. And what I did on June 20th, whatever year it was, that should have never been brought up. And you want to know why I changed my mind? Again, I did my research. That's why I changed my mind, okay? And on the other hand, my granddaughter, she's a senior this year, 4.50. She has entered the Voice of Democracy for the VFW. She has won locally. She has won for District 16, which is this general area right here. January the 26th, she goes to the state. And I'm hoping from the state she goes to the national. So, you know, I mean, it's something to be proud of. I'm a grandmother of a very, very intelligent young lady, and she works 2 jobs.
Yep.
And she has remained that 4.0 all the way through school, from elementary school to high school. And she's a phenomenal young lady, and Teray Hitch, Grandmama is so proud of you. Very proud of you. Continue your journey. She's going to SU. She's studying to be a nurse. And that's where she wants to go, and I support her wholeheartedly. I told her to make her own decisions, because sometimes when we make decisions for other people, it's not what they want, and they don't continue. So we let her make her own decision. And I commend Mayor Taylor. I called him about maybe, was it Wednesday or Thursday, about the sidewalks in the street on Mitchell Road. No sooner than I called him and looked outside, they were plowing up the street and the sidewalks. I commend him. He is a good mayor. You know, he is. And, you know, I mean, I'll give anybody their due diligence when, you know, it's due. And he's a good mayor. I don't have anything to say bad about him. Every time I've called him for something, he's always been there. So you all have a nice evening, and all of you that came out this evening, we thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Councilwoman Jackson. Councilwoman DeShield.
Yes, just one thing. Guess what? The aviation school at the airport is opening January 27th.
All right. Before.
And we also have a new agreement, if those of you that are familiar with Bayline, that, you know, is private carrier, they have opted not to continue. And we have somebody coming in that is a perfect fit.
Okay.
So in June.
Okay. Blood bank.
I do have several things to say, but we will be here till breakfast. I do have things written down. But what I'm going to do is, for the audience that decided to leave because they didn't hear their way or whatever, when they're here and present, I will address it. It goes back to the rules of order. I want to give them a complete history about how that went down and how many people on this council pulled materials together, talked about it, and had opportunity to be on a subcommittee to pull that together. And also talk about more history in regarding the vote tonight. But due to the time, I think we all need to have a respite from this.
Blood.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Listen, I won't belabor us any longer. And again, we appreciate all the folks who came out. And I think I'll end this off by saying, of course, I started the meeting when I said about change, and again, change is hard. And sometimes we don't get it. We don't get everything right. I think if we look back in history, we all can be criticizers of any historical fact or moment. And so, but I think one thing that we can say and that I can attest to is this council, we will listen to you. Each one of these members on this council will listen to you, including myself. I will listen to you. You can call me, email me. I read every single email and every single phone call. And so again, I know we had a long meeting tonight. We discussed a lot, our rules of order, et cetera. And I thank you all for the conversations. I appreciate when we discuss things. And so we'll take it back to the drawing board, and we will get it as close to right as possible. So I appreciate you, Mr. Administrator, for saying that as well. Because there are moments when there is a little bit of loss of faith. But the ending of tonight restored a little bit of that. And so, Salisbury, be well, and most importantly, be kind. I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right.
Deshawn, introduce your grandfather.
Oh!
Yes.
He did not want to be.
My childhood friend.
Yes, this meeting is now adjourned.